Welcome, friends and viewers, to another eye-opening episode in our Conspiracy Theories series. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on an industry that touches all of us, every single day, whether we realize it or not. This episode is about the fashion industry's hidden truths. Beneath the glamorous runway shows, designer logos, and ever-changing trends lies a darker reality, one built on exploitation, environmental destruction, and powerful corporations shaping what we wear, how we feel, and even how we see ourselves. From sweatshops and child labor to greenwashing campaigns and psychological manipulation, this isn't just about clothing. It's about control, profit, and hidden costs we rarely think about. So in today's episode, we'll unravel the myths, follow the money, and expose what's really being stitched into the seams of your wardrobe. Let's get into it. The global fashion industry stands as one of the largest economic forces in the world, generating trillions in revenue and providing employment to hundreds of millions. It presents itself as a space of creativity and personal expression, offering style and identity through clothing. The industry's structure reveals a coordinated effort by powerful players to maintain profits while masking the damage caused along the way. This system operates through what can be described as the normalization of exploitation. The constant flow of affordable, trendy clothing has shaped public perception, making these practices seem ordinary. Social media and algorithm-driven platforms tend to highlight entertaining content over informative, ethical discussions. As a result, many are left unaware of the real costs of fast fashion. With global revenues exceeding $1.5 trillion and growing, fashion holds tremendous cultural and economic influence. Its visual appeal and branding strategies are carefully designed to strengthen emotional connections and reduce critical thinking. This tactic shifts attention away from unethical labor practices and environmental harm. The more attractive the presentation, the less scrutiny it receives, enabling harmful practices to continue. Understanding these dynamics is essential for recognizing the deeper impact of the industry. The misleading narratives of today's fashion industry are not incidental. They reflect a long, calculated transformation. Originally, fashion was reserved for the wealthy, with garments made by skilled artisans for elite clients. The Industrial Revolution introduced mass production, shifting fashion from exclusive craftsmanship to widespread availability. Standardized sizing and mechanized labor made clothing affordable, but this shift came at a hidden cost. What is often described as the democratization of fashion was built on outsourcing labor and disregarding environmental impact. Over time, quality and ethics were replaced by speed and scale, setting the stage for future exploitation. The rise of fast fashion in the 1990s marked a new phase, where companies like Zara and H&M refined the model of quick, trend-based production. As a result, many fast fashion problems began to surface, ranging from labor exploitation to overconsumption and textile waste. Central to this model is the volume profit illusion. Individual garments are sold cheaply, requiring ever-growing sales volumes to remain profitable. Ultra-fast fashion brands, such as Shein, now introduce thousands of new items daily, producing garments designed for short-term use. This system does not simply respond to demand, it manufactures it. Planned obsolescence plays a key role, intentionally shortening product life to fuel ongoing consumption. Historically rooted in industrial design, this tactic now contributes to massive textile waste and environmental harm. Recent legal actions reflect growing awareness of this destructive strategy. The fashion industry presents low-cost, trendy clothing as a benefit to consumers, but the reality behind the scenes tells a different story. Globally, about 75 million people work in garment production. The majority are women, and fewer than 2% earn wages sufficient to support basic living needs. In the United States, investigations revealed that many garment workers receive less than the legal minimum wage, with some earning just $1.58 an hour. In countries like Bangladesh, where the garment sector contributes significantly to the national economy, nearly all workers struggle to afford food. Despite contributing to exports and GDP, progress toward paying fair wages remains minimal. Reports show that only a small number of brands have made clear commitments to pay living wages, and even fewer have followed through at the production level. Working environments often lack proper safety measures. The Rana Plaza collapse in 2013, which caused over 1,000 deaths, highlighted these risks. Even years later, similar abuses persist. Supply chain investigations reveal laborers working excessive hours for extremely low pay. Women, who form the majority of this workforce, are exposed to gender-based abuse and harassment. Yet most companies lack strong protections or accountability in their operations. These conditions are clear examples of fashion industry labor exploitation, revealing a business model built on systemic inequality and the deliberate undercutting of human rights. Forced labor remains deeply embedded in the global fashion industry's supply chains. Of the 50 million people trapped in modern slavery worldwide, many are connected to garment production. A notable concern is China's Xinjiang region, which supplies around 20% of the world's cotton. Investigations show that over 500,000 Uyghur people and other minorities have been compelled to work under state-run labor programs, both in cotton fields and garment factories. A major factor enabling these abuses is the lack of transparency. Over 40% of fashion brands still do not have visibility into where their raw materials originate. This lack of oversight allows exploitative practices to remain hidden. Research from Sheffield Hallam University has linked several global fashion brands to cotton sourced through forced Uyghur labor. This intentional opacity protects companies from accountability, while allowing them to benefit from low-cost production tied to human rights violations. The fast fashion business model depends on minimizing costs at all levels. Brands frequently pressure suppliers with bulk orders at the lowest possible prices, unreasonably short deadlines, and constant shifts to cheaper factories. This behavior results in underpaid workers, extreme overtime, and the use of unregulated subcontractors. The industry's pursuit of profit reinforces a system that rewards exploitation, making ethical competition nearly impossible and exposing the fashion industry's hidden costs behind cheap clothing. The fashion industry's demand for speed and low costs has caused severe environmental damage, making its sustainability claims largely misleading. It consumes vast amounts of water, around 79 trillion liters annually, enough to drain Lake Superior multiple times. Producing a single cotton t-shirt requires roughly 700 gallons of water, enough for a person to drink for over 2 years. Moreover, the industry causes 20% of all industrial water pollution. Toxic chemicals used in cotton farming and fabric dyeing often contaminate water supplies, harming both ecosystems and communities, especially in developing countries. This extensive use of hazardous substances and resource consumption exemplifies the fashion industry's environmental impact. Textile dyeing is one of the biggest sources of water pollution, relying heavily on thousands of harmful synthetic chemicals. Some dyes can cause serious health issues, and treatments like PFAS make clothing waterproof, but leave toxic residues that pollute soil and water as fabrics degrade. The fashion sector also contributes 8 to 10% of global carbon emissions, more than international flights and shipping combined. Synthetic fibers, such as polyester made from petroleum, significantly increase this carbon footprint due to energy-intensive production and global shipping. Additionally, fast fashion produces enormous textile waste. In the US alone, over 17 million tons of textiles were discarded in 2018, with much ending up in landfills or exported to developing countries. Synthetic fabrics release microplastics that pollute oceans and groundwater, creating a lasting environmental hazard often overlooked. Beyond its physical and environmental toll, The fashion industry employs sophisticated psychological tactics to manipulate consumer buying habits, engineering desire and, paradoxically, dissatisfaction to fuel perpetual consumption. This represents a profound lie about consumer autonomy and well-being. Luxury fashion brands intentionally limit product availability to create an illusion of scarcity, leveraging the fear of missing out to drive urgency. Louis Vuitton's success, with over $21 billion in revenue, relies heavily on this limited availability strategy, making products seem perpetually in demand. Brands also use high price points to anchor perceived value, a method known as price priming, associating cost with status rather than true production cost. For example, Dior sells a tote bag for $3,500, though its production costs only $57, using the markup to build prestige. Fast fashion brands use similar tactics, employing timers and scarcity claims to prompt quick purchases. A key element behind these strategies is the use of neuromarketing, where brands study brain responses to stimuli like ads, store layout, and design to trigger emotional buying behaviors. In 2023, 68% of luxury brands used such techniques, with emotional campaigns proving 31% more effective than rational ones. This manipulates consumers' desire for belonging and status, representing a form of emotional exploitation. Social media intensifies this effect by promoting aspirational content that drives constant desire and consumption. This cycle reflects many fashion industry hidden truths, showing how consumer autonomy is often an illusion shaped by powerful psychological forces. The global fashion industry is built upon complex power structures that enable exploitation to remain hidden in plain sight. At its core, a small group of multinational corporations holds disproportionate influence over sourcing, labor, and pricing. These dominant players control the supply chain without being directly accountable for the conditions under which their products are made. This top-down control allows them to extract maximum profits while distancing themselves from the consequences. One of the most concerning elements is the industry's deliberate lack of visibility into operations. Many brands choose not to trace or disclose the origins of their raw materials or the subcontractors involved in their production. This systemic opacity is not accidental. It is designed to obscure unethical practices. By avoiding full visibility, companies reduce liability and continue operating with minimal interference from legal, environmental, or human rights regulations. Fashion industry transparency remains critically low, especially in the raw materials and labor tiers. While some brands promote ethical sourcing, most lack verifiable supply chain data. This absence of oversight provides cover for exploitative practices to persist unchecked. Standardized audits, third-party certifications, and voluntary codes of conduct offer the illusion of ethical oversight. However, these mechanisms often lack enforcement power, allowing companies to maintain the appearance of responsibility while doing little to improve actual conditions. This structural design protects profit margins while placing the risks on the most vulnerable garment workers, local ecosystems, and impoverished communities. Regulatory gaps and weak enforcement systems allow abuse to go unchallenged. The fashion industry's polished public image conceals a system intentionally structured to benefit from cheap labor and environmental degradation. Behind the marketing lies a powerful architecture of exploitation, carefully engineered and sustained through systemic opacity. Despite pervasive falsehoods within the fashion industry, a growing counter-movement is emerging, led by conscious consumers, dedicated advocacy groups, investigative journalists, and evolving policies. These forces represent a push for transparency and accountability, challenging long-standing industry practices. Increasing consumer awareness about the severe environmental and social consequences of fast fashion is driving demand for more sustainable and ethical options. This shift encourages shoppers to research brands carefully and make mindful decisions about purchasing, caring for, and disposing of clothing. This awakening signals an empowerment of information. The industry's deception depends on consumer ignorance. But as more truths about exploitation and environmental harm become public, consumer behavior is beginning to change. This emerging demand challenges traditional fast fashion models, pressuring brands to adopt genuine reforms rather than mere greenwashing. The sustainable fashion movement has taken root as a powerful alternative, influenced by past labor controversies and ethical certification programs like the Global Organic Textile Standard and Fair Trade. Tragic events, such as the Rana Plaza collapse, galvanized calls for transparency and fair practices, giving rise to initiatives like the Fashion Revolution. Brands such as Patagonia and PeopleTree exemplify the success of eco-friendly approaches, utilizing recycled materials and organic fabrics. Non-governmental organizations and investigative reporters play a crucial role in uncovering hidden abuses and advocating for reform. Groups like the Clean Clothes Campaign push for fair wages and safe working conditions, while media exposés reveal labor violations in major supply chains. This ongoing scrutiny fosters greater accountability and highlights the necessity of regulatory frameworks. Policies such as extended producer responsibility and laws against planned obsolescence aim to compel sustainable production and consumption. Calls for mandatory human rights due diligence and banning goods made with forced labor emphasize the urgent need for enforceable change. Without strong legal measures, financial incentives will continue to favor exploitation over ethics. This evolving landscape reflects the critical importance of fashion industry truth and fashion industry sustainability in driving systemic reform. The fashion industry's biggest lie is not a singular deception, but a complex, interconnected web of systemic practices that prioritize relentless profit and growth over human well-being and planetary health. This report has meticulously exposed how this lie manifests across various dimensions: the historical engineering of exploitation through mass production and planned obsolescence, the profound human cost of wage theft, unsafe conditions, gendered abuse, and forced labor, the devastating environmental catastrophe of water pollution, carbon emissions, and textile waste, and the sophisticated psychological manipulation of consumers through manufactured desire and insecurity. These practices are enabled and perpetuated by concentrated power structures, deliberate supply chain opacity, and financial incentives that reward exploitation, often masked by superficial greenwashing. The fashion industry truth exposed lies in how these interconnected deceptions reinforce one another, creating a self-perpetuating cycle of harm. For instance, planned obsolescence fuels textile waste, which in turn necessitates more production, driving the race to the bottom for labor costs. The industry's average ethical score of 31.3 out of 100 in the 2024 Ethical Fashion Report, with only 11% of companies measuring or mitigating overproduction, starkly illustrates that progress is critically slow and often performative. This uncomfortable truth demands a collective, multi-stakeholder call to action. Moving beyond the lie requires a fundamental reevaluation of fashion's purpose and its underlying business models. Fashion, at its core, should be a vehicle for authentic self-expression, cultural heritage, and utility, rather than a tool for engineered desire, exploitation, and environmental degradation. The story of the fashion industry's hidden truths reveals how exploitation, environmental damage, and corporate deception are woven deep into the fabric of what we wear. In our next video, we'll explore more global industries hiding in plain sight. Stay tuned, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel.